The city never sleeps, they say. But at 5:30 in the morning, even Manhattan holds its breath, shrouded in the humid silence that precedes the rush. Daniel Rivers stood motionless at the window of his cramped, rail-thin apartment in Queens, watching the first bruised hints of dawn smear across the formidable skyline. The glass was cool beneath his fingertips. Behind him, the only sound was the steady, gentle rhythm of his daughter Sophie's breathing, a delicate counterpoint to the city's roar. 9 years old. 9 years since Emily's absence had become a permanent fixture in their lives, a hollow space only partially filled by his frantic, solitary effort. 9 years of doing this alone. He turned back to the minuscule kitchen, the efficiency of his movements honed by necessity and grief. He cracked 3 eggs into a dented metal bowl, whisking them with practiced, surgical precision. The motions were automatic now, a protective shell. Breakfast, school lunch, backpack check. Every morning, the same routine. Not a comfortable routine, but a solid one. The routine that kept them both standing upright. Daddy. Sophie appeared in the doorway, a small, sleepy figure rubbing the last vestiges of sleep from her eyes. Her dark hair stood out from her head, a wild, protective halo. Morning, princess. Scrambled or sunny side up? Scrambled. She climbed onto the worn kitchen chair, the springs groaning beneath her weight, her feet swinging freely. She looked up at him, her request hitting him with the unexpected force of a physical blow. Dad, can you come to my science fair today? I'm presenting about heart surgery. Heart surgery. The irony was brutal. Of course, she was his little girl, 9 years old, already tracing the phantom outline of the life he had expertly and deliberately abandoned 5 years ago. Sweetie, I have to work a double shift today. Mrs. Patterson will take you, okay? Her face fell, a swift, heartbreaking shift, but she masked the disappointment instantly. Too quickly. 9 years old and already learning the essential, bitter lesson of swallowing disappointment whole, of minimizing her own needs. It's okay, Daddy. I know you're working hard for us. He didn't trust his voice, so he simply placed the plate in front of her and bent to kiss the crown of her head, inhaling the clean, sleep-scented smell of her hair. On the refrigerator, pinned beneath a ridiculous plastic magnet shaped like a stethoscope, hung the photo. Him, young and proud in surgical scrubs. Emily beside him, incandescent, glowing with the life that would soon be stolen. Before the diagnosis. Before the overwhelming financial wreckage the treatment caused. Before the bills that ate their savings and shattered their future. Before everything fell apart. Eat up. I need to catch the early train. Across the city, high above the awakening skyscrapers, in a penthouse apartment that seemed to float precariously over Central Park, Eleanor Hart was already dressed. Black Armani suit, cut with aggressive, clean lines. Heels whose price tag dwarfed most people's monthly rent. Her hair was pulled back into a severe chignon so tight it made her temples throb with dull, constant pain. She didn't sleep much anymore. Hadn't for years. She often wondered if the constant, low-grade hum of anxiety had simply burned away the necessity of rest. Why sleep when there was work to be done? The IPO was 6 weeks away. 6 weeks to transform Hart and Morrison Financial from a highly successful private firm into a publicly traded powerhouse. 6 weeks to prove, beyond any doubt, that she hadn't just inherited the corner office. She deserved to be queen of the entire corporate kingdom her father had built. Her phone buzzed, vibrating insistently against the marble countertop. Thomas, her long-suffering assistant. Ms. Hart, the board meeting is at 9 o'clock. Should I confirm your lunch with the Children's Hospital Foundation? Cancel it. And the charity gala appearance? Reschedule that too. Ma'am, you've canceled the charity 3 times already. I said, cancel, Thomas. Her voice was razor sharp. Nothing else matters right now. She ended the call abruptly, the silence rushing in to fill the void. She stared at her reflection in the vast, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the park. A perfect, demanding self-portrait. 42 years old, CEO of a company valued at over $100 million. Divorced, childless, utterly alone. The reflection stared back, cold and assessing, offering no comfort, only the metallic taste of ambition. At 7:45 a.m., Daniel pushed his overflowing cleaning cart into the Hart and Morrison Building's service elevator. The 42nd floor, executive territory. This was the rarefied stratum where people like Eleanor Hart made decisions that dictated market trends and shifted global wealth, while people like him made sure their waste bins were empty and their high-gloss surfaces were spotless. The elevator dinged softly, a polite notification of his arrival. He stepped out, beginning his methodical rounds in the empty corridor. The main bank of elevators opened with a stately chime. Eleanor emerged, already mid-call, phone pressed tight to her ear, eyes fixed on the financial data streaming across the tablet screen in her other hand. She didn't see him. She never did. But then, the ancient service elevator sputtered and died, refusing to close its doors, trapping him in the executive floor's main corridor, right in her path. As she swept past, Eleanor stopped, her expression freezing into one of distaste. She wrinkled her nose, a flicker of professional revulsion crossing her face. You reek of pine and bleach. This is the 42nd floor, Mr. Whoever. Use the service elevator where you belong. It's broken, ma'am. Maintenance is... I don't care. Fix it or find another route. This floor needs to smell of success, not industrial cleaner. She walked away, her expensive heels clicking a rapid, judgmental rhythm against the imported marble. 5 years he had worked in this building. 5 years of quietly keeping her world immaculate, pristine, and functional, while she noticed only what he cleaned, never the invisible man who was doing the cleaning. He thought of Sophie's question that morning. Heart surgery. The life he'd left behind. Sometimes the past doesn't let go easily. Sometimes it just waits, patient and predatory, for its moment. At 9 a.m., the boardroom was filled with a tension so palpable and sharp you could almost taste the metallic tang of fear in the air. 12 high-ranking executives were seated around the enormous glass table, every single one of them desperately trying not to meet the eyes of Eleanor Hart, who stood at the head of the table like a general surveying her troops just moments before a catastrophic battle. Someone leaked our IPO pricing strategy to Blackstone Capital. Silence, the deep, ringing kind that screams. We're talking 200 million in potential losses. Every person in this room is a suspect until proven otherwise. Margaret Morrison, the company's co-founder, and a woman who represented old money and old caution, spoke carefully, trying to inject sanity into the volatile atmosphere. Eleanor, perhaps we should involve outside investigators. I will handle this my way, Margaret. Outside the seamless glass walls, Daniel continued his rounds, meticulously wiping down the windows. His reflection ghosted across the heated, silent conversation within, an ephemeral, ignored observer. He could hear every single word. 5 years of working in the background meant people simply forgot he had ears. An executive named Jenkins shifted uncomfortably in his leather seat. Ms. Hart, we could delay the IPO. And lose investor confidence? Are you incompetent, Jenkins, or just willfully stupid? Daniel paused his work. Through the flawless pane of glass, he watched Eleanor's face. Hard, cold, magnificent in its focused fury. But underneath the anger, buried so deeply that most people would never catch it, was terror. He'd seen that exact look before, in his own mirror years ago, when Emily's doctor had quietly pronounced the word terminal, and his entire world had instantly collapsed into a single, impossible point of unmanageable pain. He moved on, pushing his cart silently down the corridor. Behind him, the meeting continued, the voices rising, accusations beginning to fly like shrapnel. That's when he heard the footsteps, heavy, irregular, driven by a furious purpose. Daniel turned. A man was barreling toward the boardroom, face flushed a dangerous crimson, eyes wild and unfocused. Garrett Chun, the former CFO. Daniel remembered the day security escorted him out 3 months ago, the man's desperate screams echoing through the silent, marble halls of the company. Sir, you're not authorized to be here. Garrett shoved him hard, a desperate, clumsy push. Daniel stumbled, his cleaning cart tipping violently. Bottles of industrial solution crashed, exploding on impact, the clear liquid spreading rapidly across the expensive marble floor. "Get out of my way." Garrett ignored him, grabbing the heavy boardroom door handle. Inside, 12 heads turned sharply. Eleanor stood up, her eyes widening as she recognized the man. Eleanor Hart. And then Daniel saw it. The gun. Pulled with ragged effort from Garrett's waistband, black metal trembling violently in a shaking hand. Everything seemed to slow down. In the boardroom, the stunned executive screamed, diving instinctively beneath the heavy glass table. Eleanor stood utterly frozen, a statue carved out of pure shock and disbelief. Garrett raised the weapon, sighting down the barrel. "You destroyed my life. My wife left. My kids won't talk to me. I lost everything because of you." Eleanor found her voice, metallic but firm. Garrett put the gun down. "We can talk. Talking time is over." Daniel's body moved before his conscious brain registered the danger. 5 years as a Navy medic, 15 years as a surgeon. The instinct was carved so deep into his bones it might as well have been his genetic code. He launched himself forward. The gun fired. A white-hot, overwhelming explosion of pain ripped through his shoulder. He crashed into Eleanor with bruising force, taking her down onto the marble floor with him, his body a heavy, clumsy shield between her and the bullet that was meant to end her life. Blood. So much blood. His blood, deep and shocking red, soaking rapidly into her impeccably tailored Armani suit, spreading across the pristine marble floor. Security swarmed in seconds. Garrett went down, subdued and screaming, the gun clattering uselessly away. Eleanor was trapped beneath Daniel, her face inches from his, her eyes wide with shock, yes, but also with something else. A devastating flicker of comprehension. "Why?" Her voice was a small, ragged whisper. "Why did you save me?" Daniel's vision blurred violently. The pristine boardroom ceiling spun above him, the fluorescent lights burning with the intensity of distant, uncaring stars. "Because," he forced the words out through a growing gray fog of fading consciousness. "Someone had to." The world went dark. Hospital lights, the relentless, monotonous beeping of monitoring machines, the aggressive, sterile smell of antiseptic, strong enough to cut through the thick fog of medication that enveloped him. Daniel slowly opened his eyes to find Eleanor Hart sitting stiffly beside his bed. She hadn't left. Dried, dark blood still stained the exquisite Armani fabric, a grotesque crimson reminder of the sacrifice he had made. Her perfect, severe hairdo had come completely undone, dark strands framing a face that looked 10 years older, drawn and vulnerable. "You should go home, Miss Hart." She flinched almost imperceptibly at the sound of her own name. "The doctor said you will recover fully. The bullet missed your lung by barely an inch." "Lucky me." She glanced at the clipboard resting on the bedside table, Daniel's medical file. Before he could stop her, she reached out and picked it up. "Ms. Hart, that's private." She ignored him, reading in absolute, profound silence. He watched the careful, hardened walls of her face begin to crumble with every line her eyes scanned. Asterisk patient Daniel Rivers, age 40. Occupation, janitor. Emergency contact, Sophie Rivers, daughter, age 9. Previous occupation, cardiovascular surgeon, Mount Sinai Hospital, 2005 to 2019. The final line hung in the air. Asterisk board certifications. American Board of Surgery, thoracic surgery. Reason for leaving, personal wife's terminal illness. A small, yellowed newspaper clipping, brittle with age, fell from the file onto the pristine white sheet. Eleanor picked it up with trembling hands. Asterisk hero doctor saves factory workers in chemical explosion. The accompanying photograph showed a much younger Daniel, still wearing his surgical scrubs, standing stoically outside a burning building. The article detailed how Dr. Daniel Rivers had personally pulled 4 workers to safety, including the plant manager, Richard Hart, Eleanor's father, the man who had died 2 years ago from a sudden heart attack, never once having told his daughter who the hero was who saved him that day. She looked up at Daniel, silent tears streaming unchecked down her face, the running mascara creating 2 black rivers that mocked the perfection she usually maintained. You saved my father. It wasn't a question, but a devastating, impossible statement. I didn't know he was your father. He thanked me. That was enough. And I never knew. All this time you've been right there in my building, and I walked right past you every single day, seeing nothing. Her voice broke completely. I am so terribly sorry. My daughter Sophie, Daniel said quietly, trying to anchor himself in the present reality. Every morning she asks me what I do at work. I tell her I help people keep their workspaces safe. She thinks I'm still a hero, like when I was a surgeon. Eleanor's carefully constructed walls, the ones she'd spent decades reinforcing, crumbled completely. All this time a decorated surgeon working night shifts, and I never even bothered to learn your name. The hospital room door burst open dramatically. A small girl with wild dark hair launched herself at Daniel's bedside. Daddy! Sophie grabbed his non-injured hand, careful of the foreline, her small face streaked with panic and tears. Behind her, an elderly woman with kind, weary eyes hovered nervously in the doorway. They said you got shot. Why would you do that? Daniel managed a pained, genuine smile. Because that's what heroes do, princess. Remember? Sophie turned her intense, 9-year-old scrutiny onto Eleanor, studying her without preamble. You're the CEO lady. The one from Daddy's work. Eleanor could only nod, suddenly unable to form words. Thank you for letting my dad work there. He works really hard so I can go to school and become a doctor just like he used to be. The innocent words landed like heavy stones in the silent room. Eleanor looked at Daniel, at Sophie, at the small family unit held together by love, sheer sacrifice, and the kind of quiet strength that had absolutely nothing to do with money or power. Sophie, Eleanor whispered, her voice husky, your father saved my life today. Sophie's face brightened immediately, flooded with pure, unadulterated pride. He does that. He's the bravest person I know. Eleanor stood abruptly, walking to the hospital window. The sprawling, uncaring city was spread below, millions of people living millions of separate, complex lives. And she, Eleanor Hart, had been so intensely focused on her own small, cold kingdom that she had never noticed any of it. I have everything, she said quietly, her breath misting the glass. And nothing at all. The next morning, Daniel Rivers's face was everywhere. Every news channel, every major website, every social media platform. Janitor hero saves CEO from armed attacker. Former surgeon turned janitor stops workplace shooter. The hidden hero who changed everything. Eleanor's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Board members, panicking investors, relentless media requests. Everyone wanted a piece of the story, wanted to capitalize on the sensational drama and transform tragedy into cold, marketable brand value. She ignored them all. Instead, she drove to the county jail, where Garrett Chun sat in a sterile holding cell awaiting arraignment. He looked up sharply as she entered the visiting area, pure shock written across his haggard face. Why are you here? Eleanor sat down slowly, deliberately studying the man who had tried to kill her. She saw the hollow, haunted eyes, the trembling hands, the complete, visible destruction of a human being pushed far past his breaking point. To understand why. Garrett laughed. A sound that was bitter and utterly broken. You want to understand? I worked for you for 15 years. 15 years of 80-hour weeks, missed birthdays, destroyed family dinners. One mistake, one single minor error in a quarterly report, and you threw me away like garbage. I gave you severance. You gave me 3 months' pay and completely destroyed my reputation in the industry. My wife couldn't handle the shame. She took the kids and left. I lost my house, my savings, everything I'd spent my life building. Gone because you decided I was dead weight. Eleanor felt the words like physical, brutal blows. She remembered that day perfectly. Remembered firing Garrett without a second thought, without asking about circumstances, without offering a chance to explain. Just the cold, efficient elimination of a problem. I just wanted you to feel the pain I felt. Garrett continued, his voice cracking. Just for one moment, I wanted you to know what it's like to lose everything. I'm sorry. The words felt impossibly inadequate, hollow. I was wrong. Garrett stared at her, his expression incomprehension. What? I was wrong about you. I was wrong about a lot of things. Eleanor stood up. When you get out, come find me. I'm starting a program helping people who've been laid off. Real help, not just severance checks. Second chances. After what I did to you, a man I barely knew took a bullet for me yesterday. If he can show that kind of grace, maybe I can learn to do the same. 2 weeks later, Daniel returned to work. The security guard, a man who had never spared him a glance, stood stiffly at attention as he entered. His arm still held immobile in a sling. Welcome back, Mr. Rivers. Employees he'd never spoken to stopped him. To shake his hand, to thank him, to tell him he was a true hero. He smiled, deflected the praise, and tried to make his way quietly to the janitor's closet. Eleanor found him there, staring at the photo of Sophie. He kept taped discreetly to the metal shelf. Company meeting in 10 minutes. Everyone is required to attend. Ms. Hart, I'm not really. Please, I need you there. The auditorium held 800 people. Every employee, from the corner office C-suite executives down to the most junior members of the maintenance crew, was present. Eleanor stood on the stage, the spotlight harsh, feeling more nervous than she had been during her entire high-stakes career. 3 weeks ago, a man tried to kill me in this building. The massive room fell into a profound silence. I am alive today because of Daniel Rivers. She gestured to the enormous screen behind her, where his photo appeared. Not in his janitor's uniform, but in surgical scrubs, the day he'd received his board certification. Young, confident, fiercely proud, and full of hope. Daniel Rivers left a $500,000 a year career to be with his daughter, to raise her alone after his wife died. And for 5 years, I walked past him every single day without ever noticing him. Eleanor's voice cracked, but she pushed through the emotion. Today that changes. I'm announcing the Rivers Medical Fund. Effective immediately, every employee will have access to comprehensive health coverage, including experimental treatments and second opinions. No one will lose their family because they can't afford care in this company. Applause erupted. A wave of genuine, heartfelt relief. Eleanor raised her hand to quiet them. I'm also announcing flexible work policies. Work-life balance isn't a luxury. It is a necessity, and we're implementing a no employee left behind program. Instead of quick, efficient layoffs, we will offer retraining, support, and second chances. She found Daniel in the crowd, her gaze direct, because a janitor taught a CEO what real strength looks like. After the meeting, Eleanor called Daniel to her newly redesigned office. I want you to be our chief medical officer for corporate wellness. $250,000 salary, full benefits, an office on this floor. Daniel laughed, a genuine surprised laugh. That's incredibly generous, Ms. Hart. You deserve it. I can't accept. Eleanor's face fell, the old irritation resurfacing momentarily. Why not? Because when I was a surgeon, I missed Sophie's childhood. I missed her first word, her first day of school, every piano recital, every single parent-teacher conference. This janitor job? I'm home every night by 6 o'clock. I help with homework. We have dinner together. I tuck her in. He met Eleanor's eyes, his conviction absolute. No amount of money is worth missing that again. Eleanor felt something profound shift in her chest. This man, this impossible, incredible man, was prioritizing his daughter over everything she valued. What if I make you a part-time medical consultant? You work when Sophie's at school. Off at 3 every day. Summers off. $80,000 salary. You help design our wellness program. And I still do my janitor job? Eleanor smiled. A real smile that reached her eyes. If you want to. Daniel extended his hand, sealing the deal for Sophie's college fund. Deal. 3 months later, on Thanksgiving Day, Eleanor opened the door of her immense, quiet penthouse to find Daniel and Sophie standing on the doorstep, holding a slightly crushed, store-bought pie and wearing matching nervous smiles. Ms. Hart. Sophie bounced eagerly on her toes. Your apartment is beautiful. It's big, Eleanor said quietly, stepping aside to let them in. But it's not a home. Not like yours. They cooked together, or rather, Daniel cooked while Eleanor tried not to set anything on fire, feeling spectacularly useless in the high-tech kitchen. Sophie narrated from the counter, offering professional commentary on her father's technique. Dad always adds cinnamon to the sweet potatoes. Mom taught him that. Eleanor's hands stilled on the knife she was using to chop vegetables. Your mom sounds like she was a wonderful cook. She was wonderful at everything, Sophie said simply, profoundly. Daddy misses her a lot. I see him looking at her picture sometimes, crying when he thinks I'm asleep. Daniel's jaw tightened, but he offered no denial. Their hands brushed as they both reached simultaneously for the same cutting board. The touch lingered. Neither pulled away immediately. After dinner, while Sophie dozed contentedly on the sprawling velvet couch, Daniel and Eleanor stood on the balcony, watching the city lights blur into streaks of yellow and white below. I haven't felt this way since my divorce, Eleanor confessed, leaning against the cold railing. Like maybe there's more to life than the next quarterly report. Emily used to say the same thing, that I was married to my work, not her. Daniel's voice was rough with old guilt. By the time I realized she was right, it was too late. The cancer had spread, and all my surgical skill couldn't save the one person who mattered most in the world. Eleanor turned to him, the lights of the city reflecting in her eyes. Is that why you left medicine? Every patient reminded me I'd failed her, that I'd chosen the operating room over our life together. After she died, I couldn't face it anymore. But you're such a gifted surgeon. I'm a better father. The words hung between them, simple, devastating, and entirely true. Eleanor's phone buzzed aggressively. She ignored it, savoring the silence and the proximity to him. It buzzed again, and again. Finally, she sighed and looked at the screen. It was Thomas, her assistant. She answered, her voice tight. This better be important. Ms. Hart, we have a problem. The leaked IPO data? It wasn't Garrett. Eleanor's blood went instantly cold. What? It was Jenkins. He's been working with Blackstone all along. He's trying to tank the IPO tomorrow morning, and he's currently on a plane to Singapore with $2 million in cash. Eleanor ended the call, her legs suddenly unsteady, the world tilting slightly. What's wrong? Daniel asked, stepping closer. Everything. Everything is wrong, she told him, staring blindly into the darkness. All of it. The betrayal, the timing, the utter impossibility of fixing this before the market opens in the morning. I don't know what to do. For the first time in my career, I have no idea how to fix this mess. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then his hand settled gently on her shoulder, a familiar, reassuring weight. Let me help. They worked through the night, fueled by cold coffee and the adrenaline of shared crisis. Daniel, using his finely tuned medical training, analyzed the patterns in the company's internal communication logs, looking for stress indicators, anomalies, behavioral panic. Here, Jenkins accessed confidential files at 3 a.m. multiple times. That's a classic stress response behavior, fight or flight. He was desperate. Eleanor dug deeper into Jenkins's background, finally finding what she needed in his convoluted insurance claims. His wife had stage 4 ovarian cancer. No coverage for the expensive experimental treatment she desperately needed. Eleanor looked at Daniel, and a profound understanding passed between them. Jenkins's impossible choices were a chilling reflection of Daniel's own past, his own brutal financial struggles while Emily was dying. I did this to him, Eleanor whispered, self-reproach heavy in her voice. My policies, my cost-cutting measures. I created the system that forced him to do this. So now you fix it. At 6 a.m. Eleanor initiated a video call to their banking partner in Singapore. Took 3 agonizing hours to locate Jenkins. 3 hours of negotiating, threatening, and pleading across continents. Finally, his haggard face appeared on her laptop screen. He looked older than 40, hollowed out. A man standing on the edge of a cliff with absolutely nothing left to lose. Ms. Hart. His voice was flat, defeated. Come to gloat? I came to offer you a choice. Eleanor kept her voice steady, professional yet empathetic. Your wife. Margaret told me about her diagnosis. Stage 4 ovarian cancer. The experimental treatment costs $500,000. Your insurance won't cover it. Jenkins's jaw tightened visibly. You think I don't know that? Why do you think I did this? Because I failed you. Because our system prioritizes profits over people. Because I built a company where someone like you, 15 years of loyal service, could feel this was your only option. She leaned closer to the camera, her expression intense. Come back, Jenkins. Return the money. Testify against Blackstone. Help us recover. And I will personally guarantee your wife receives every treatment she needs. Full coverage. No caps. No questions. Why? The word came out broken, barely audible. After what I did, why would you? Eleanor thought of Daniel, of the bullet he'd taken for a woman who treated him with contempt, of the grace he'd shown to someone who hadn't even learned his name. Because someone recently taught me that revenge doesn't heal anything. But grace can change everything. Jenkins broke completely, tears streaming silently, his shoulders shaking with released tension. Through the screen, Eleanor watched a desperate man remember what hope felt like. If I come back, I'm facing criminal charges. Prison time. You're looking at serious prison time, Jenkins. But I will personally fly back. I will testify at your sentencing as a character witness, explaining the coercion and the desperation of your circumstances, the debt, your wife's illness. With that mitigating evidence, you will likely receive strict probation and mandatory community service. But, Jenkins, her voice sharpened to an icy point, the kind that had defined her career. If you try to run, if you vanish again, I will hunt you down. I will use every legal and financial resource at my disposal until you are found and punished to the fullest extent. Choose wisely. The heavy silence stretched across the thousands of miles separating them. A gulf wider than the ocean, filled with a lifetime of broken trust and professional betrayal. Finally, the shaky line went silent for a moment. Jenkins' voice, small and defeated, returned. I'll be on the next flight back. When the call finally ended, Daniel gently pulled Eleanor into his arms, holding her tightly as the tension finally began to drain from her shoulders. That was the right thing to do, wasn't it? Eleanor's voice was a whisper, still shaking from the confrontation. He betrayed the company, Daniel. He cost us millions in market instability and damages, put hundreds of honest employees' jobs at risk, and I had the power to destroy him, had him extradited from overseas, prosecuted, and sent to a federal prison for decades. Daniel tilted her face up so their eyes met, his gaze steady and warm. Instead, he said softly, you chose mercy. You chose to break the cycle of retaliation and endless corporate cruelty. Eleanor swallowed, thinking of Garrett sitting in that cheap, temporary jail cell. She thought of all the employees she'd casually fired over the years without a second thought, the files shredded, the lives she had disrupted in pursuit of the next quarterly target, the relentless goal of maximum profit. I can't undo the past. I can't magically bring back the years I spent being exactly what the cold, unforgiving business world taught me to be: ruthless, efficient, alone. But maybe, her voice finally broke, a fragile, hopeful sound. Maybe I can make sure the future is different. This was the moment of her true transformation, choosing forgiveness over the deep, satisfying urge for revenge, choosing humanity over the cold, calculated metrics that had defined her entire, exhausting career, choosing to embody the person Daniel's self-sacrifice had shown her she always had the capacity to become. At 9:30 a.m., the chaos of the trading floor, a sound that usually fueled Eleanor, now felt almost alien. Daniel, stiffly uncomfortable but undeniably proud in his best suit, stood beside her on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. The air thrummed with anticipation, cameras aimed, phones flashing. The opening bell sounded, a jarring, historic gong. Hardin Morrison Financial's ticker symbol flashed across every massive screen. HMF. The opening price read $58. It held steady for a long, agonizing 30 seconds. Then, 59. Then 60. Eleanor's hand instinctively found Daniel's, her grip tight enough to cut off circulation. The floor exploded. Traders erupted in applause and shouts of manic success. The cameras flashed, catching the CEO's triumph, but Eleanor wasn't watching the screens anymore. She was watching Daniel's face, watching him break into that quiet, genuine smile. The smile that meant more to her than any stock price ever could. By noon, the price had peaked at $73 per share, adding $250 million to their market value. The IPO was a massive, undeniable success. Back in the sleek, glass-walled conference room, Margaret Morrison, her face flushed with relief and pride, raised a crystal flute of champagne. "You did it, Eleanor. Despite everything, the near-death experience, the leak, the traitor Jenkins, you pulled it off." Eleanor looked at Daniel, then back at Margaret, her expression softening. "We did it, all of us." That evening, the company threw an extravagant celebration high up on the penthouse rooftop. Manhattan sparkled below, an endless sea of lights and possibilities stretching to the horizon. Eleanor slipped away from the noise and music, finding a quiet corner alone on the balcony. Daniel soon found her there, leaning on the railing, gazing out at the city. "You should be celebrating with your team," he suggested gently. "I wanted to celebrate with you," she replied, turning to face him. The city hummed below them, a low, continuous sound representing a million stories, a million lives, all spinning forward into unknown futures. "When Garrett pointed that gun at me," Eleanor said quietly, her voice barely audible above the wind, "my only thought was that I'd wasted my life. No family, no deep love, just endless work, just empty achievement and sterile trophies." She turned fully to face him, her eyes shining in the reflected city light. "But then you saved me, Daniel. And every day since, you've been saving me from myself." Daniel stepped closer, covering the remaining distance between them. "Eleanor, I'm just a janitor with a kid. You're a CEO worth hundreds of millions, heading up a massive financial entity. What could I possibly offer you that you don't already have?" She took his calloused hand, holding it firmly. "You offer me something I haven't genuinely had in 15 years. A reason to come home that isn't just about turning off the lights. You showed me what really matters." They kissed. It was soft, tentative, like two people who had forgotten how to be truly vulnerable, cautiously learning the steps to trust again. "Daddy!" They broke apart instantly. Sophie stood in the doorway leading to the rooftop, her face split by a grin so wide it looked like she'd won the lottery. "Are you guys together now?" Eleanor looked at Daniel, then at Sophie, embracing this small, perfect moment of unexpected normalcy. "Sophie, would that be okay with you?" Sophie launched herself at them both, wrapping her tiny arms around Eleanor's waist and Daniel's legs simultaneously. "I've been waiting forever. Can I call you Eleanor? Or should I start practicing saying Mom?" Eleanor knelt down swiftly, holding Sophie's radiant face in her hands, her heart swelling until it felt too large for her chest. "Let's start with Eleanor, sweetie, and see where we go from there." 1 year later, Eleanor's minimalist, museum-like penthouse had changed entirely. The walls were dotted with candid photos. Sophie's brightly colored artwork clung to the sleek stainless steel refrigerator, and brightly colored sneakers were haphazardly kicked off near the door. The indisputable sounds and sights of life, of family, of home. The doorbell rang. Margaret Morrison entered, carrying a celebratory bottle of vintage wine and a thick folder bursting with documents. She spread the papers across the dining table, photos, testimonials, detailed financial reports. "The Rivers Medical Fund just reached $10 million in donations," Margaret announced, her eyes bright with a deep, unprecedented satisfaction. 543 families helped. "Look at these." She pointed to a photo of a young mother holding 2 tiny, fragile bundles. Sarah Miller, premature twins. $200,000 in NICU bills, which would have bankrupted them. "We covered everything. Both babies are thriving now." Another photo. An elderly man, frail but smiling, in a hospital bed, surrounded by grandchildren. Marcus Williams. Experimental Alzheimer's treatment that would have cost his family their home. Eleanor picked up a handwritten letter, the shaky script of someone who had suffered a severe stroke and had painstakingly relearned how to form letters. "You saved my husband's life. The treatment worked. He's coming home next week. Thank you for giving us a second chance at our future." Maria Rodriguez. Eleanor looked at Daniel, who was reading over her shoulder, his hand finding hers automatically. And Jenkins? Eleanor asked quietly, almost afraid to mention his name. Margaret smiled knowingly. His wife completed her final round of immunotherapy last month. Scans came back clear. She's officially in remission. How's he doing? He's our CFO again, but more importantly, he's heading up the funds allocation committee. Nobody understands desperation better than someone who's lived through it. He's making sure every dollar goes to the people who need it most, not just those who fill out the forms correctly. Eleanor felt Daniel's arms slide around her waist, a grounding, comfortable weight. She felt Sophie, who had wandered in from her homework, lean against her other side. We're making a difference, Sophie said solemnly, folding her arms, just like Dad always said we should. No, sweetheart. Eleanor kissed the top of Sophie's head, smelling the faint scent of bubblegum and pencils. Your father made the difference. I'm just trying to keep up. After dinner, Daniel led Eleanor and Sophie out onto the balcony, the same balcony where they'd shared their fragile first kiss a year prior. He knelt down on one knee, Sophie kneeling excitedly beside him, clutching a small velvet box with barely contained anticipation. Eleanor Hart, you walked into my life when I had entirely forgotten that I mattered. You reminded me that it's okay to dream again, that it's possible to open your heart after you thought it was permanently closed and sealed shut. He opened the box. Inside was a simple platinum band, elegant and understated, perfect for her. Will you marry me? Eleanor's vision blurred immediately with hot, cleansing tears. Yes. Oh God, yes. 1,000 times. Yes. Sophie squealed, jumping up and down like a hyperactive spring. I'm gonna be a flower girl. I'm gonna be a flower girl. 6 months later, in a small, intimate ceremony attended only by close friends and family, they exchanged vows. Eleanor spoke first, her voice steady and clear despite the tears streaming down her cheeks. You taught me that the best things in life can't be measured in dollars or market cap. That success without deep, true love is just an empty trophy sitting on a shelf. That being truly known, seen without judgment, is the greatest gift anyone can ever give. It was Daniel's turn. You taught me it's never too late for a second chance. That the heart can heal, even when we think it's broken beyond all repair. That love doesn't replace what we've lost. It just makes room for something new, something better. They kissed, truly kissing this time as husband and wife. Sophie had taken her role as flower girl with the utmost seriousness. She had practiced for weeks, walking up and down the apartment hallway with a basket filled with torn newspaper confetti, perfecting her slow, deliberate technique. Now, in her delicate lavender dress, her hair carefully arranged in soft curls, she beamed with uncontrollable pride as she scattered petals along the aisle with wild abandon, determined to cover every inch. I did good, right? She whispered to Eleanor afterward during the reception. Eleanor knelt down, smoothing Sophie's flower crown which had slipped slightly. You did perfect, sweetheart. Absolutely perfect. Does this mean I can officially call you Mom now? Eleanor's throat tightened, a sudden, powerful emotion seizing her. She had been waiting for this moment, hoping for it, yet terrified of the responsibility. If you want to, she managed to choke out. Sophie threw her arms around Eleanor's neck with ferocious strength. I want to. I really, really want to. And just like that, Eleanor's family was finally complete. The reception was held downstairs in the stunning, cavernous lobby of Hart and Morrison, which had been magically transformed for the occasion. On the wall, near the main elevator bank, a new, discreet plaque had been installed, honoring those who serve without recognition. It read, Founded by Eleanor Hart and Dr. Daniel Rivers. Beside the plaque was a framed photo. Daniel in his janitor's uniform, Eleanor in her sharp business suit, Sophie beaming between them, all three truly smiling. And, situated prominently in the corner, was Daniel's official cleaning cart. Because he still worked part-time as a janitor, still believed passionately in the dignity of the work, and still wanted Sophie to understand that no job undertaken with integrity was ever beneath anyone. As the party began to wind down, Daniel found Eleanor watching Sophie dance wildly with Margaret Morrison. "What are you thinking?" Eleanor leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. "That I spent 40 years chasing the wrong things. And it took a bullet and a janitor to show me the truth, which is this: we're not measured by what we achieve in the boardroom. We're measured by who we love, how we treat people when no one's watching, the small kindnesses that cost us nothing but mean absolutely everything to someone else." Daniel kissed her temple. "You know what Sophie said to me yesterday? She said her science project for school was about you. About how people can fundamentally change." Eleanor's eyes widened, shocked. "What? Come on, I'll show you." They walked quietly up to Sophie's newly decorated bedroom. On her desk sat a science fair project board. The title, clearly lettered, read, "The Human Heart, How It Heals." The conclusion, written in Sophie's careful, determined handwriting, was the real thesis of their new life. The heart is stronger than we think, can break and still keep beating, can lose everything and still find the courage to love again. I learned this from watching my dad after my mom died. And I learned it again watching Eleanor learn to be part of our family. That's what makes us human. Not that we never break, but that we keep going anyway. Eleanor read it twice, tears silently streaming down her face and dripping onto the display board. "She wrote this about me? About all of us?" "She got first place," Daniel whispered proudly. That night, after Sophie was finally asleep in her new, warm bedroom, Eleanor and Daniel stood one final time on the balcony where everything had irrevocably changed. "Do you ever think about that morning?" Eleanor asked, gripping the railing. "The shooting." "Every day," Daniel admitted. "It was the worst moment of my life and, impossibly, the best." "How can it possibly be both?" Daniel pulled her close, wrapping her in his arms until their hearts were beating in sync. "Because it brought me here, to you, to this family. I would take that bullet 1,000 times for this life we have built." Eleanor looked out at the city, at the millions of distant lights representing millions of individual lives, each one fighting their own battles, searching for their own meaning. She thought of the woman she'd been a year ago, isolated in a penthouse, successful and empty, blind to everything that truly mattered. And she thought of the woman she was now, a wife, a mother, still a CEO, but no longer defined solely by her title. "I love you, Daniel Rivers. I love you, Eleanor Rivers." The city stretched below them, a relentless organism of 8 million lives intersecting in ways they would never fully know. But here on this balcony, 2 of those lives had found each other, had chosen each other over everything else. "Tomorrow," Eleanor said quietly, settling into his embrace, "I'm cutting my hours. 3 days in the office, the rest remote or at home." Daniel kissed her temple, acknowledging the gravity of that professional decision. "The board won't like it. The board will adjust," she stated with the old CEO certainty, but imbued with new conviction. "I spent 40 years chasing the wrong things, Daniel. I am not wasting another day being absent." She placed her hand over his steady heart, feeling its rhythmic beat. "This is what matters. You, Sophie, us." The janitor's cart still sat in the polished Hardin Morrison lobby, a permanent, polished installation now. A silent reminder that no one should go unnoticed, that everyone matters, and that the smallest, most selfless act of courage can change absolutely everything. Because Daniel Rivers had taught Eleanor Hart the profound truth. Success isn't measured by what you achieve, but by who you become, who you choose to love, and how you show up for others when it costs you something real. And on that final, most important measure, she was finally rich beyond counting.
My flag sings vipers to the sky. Melodies flows gentle and free, carrying dreams across the sea. every note a piece of me, forever here in harmony. My flood sings wipers to the sky. Melodies flows gentle and free, carrying dreams across the sea. In every note a piece of me, forever here in harmony. Music lives inside my heart. Music lives inside my heart.